Good morning, everyone. My name is Griffith. I'm the legal advisor for the licensing committee. It might be appropriate. Actually, the procedure will set this out. So I'll read out the procedure and I'll tailor it to the people who are in attendance rather than go through the entire procedure. But the running order will be as follows. First of all, the chair will open the meeting, introduce themselves, and then members of the committee, officers and other parties will also introduce themselves. The chair will also explain the nature of the decision to be taken and outline the procedure to be followed. The members will be asked to make any declaration of personal or prejudicial interest in this matter. And then the chair will then ask the licensing officer to present the report. Members of the committee will be invited to ask any relevant questions of the licensing officer in respect of the report. And then other persons present will also be invited to ask for any clarification in respect of the report presented. Am I making myself clear? I can hear a little bit of buffering in the background. If everyone can hear me clearly, that's fine. There will then be, in this case, the licensing officer will then read out the representations made by the other persons, seeing as they are not in attendance to present them themselves. Given that they are not here, then it's going to be difficult for members of the committee and the applicant to ask questions of those persons. So they will have to stand at face value. The chair will then invite the applicant, or in this case, Mr. Edwards, to outline the application, and then members of the committee can then ask questions of the applicant. And if there's anything then that needs clarification, the opportunity for closing submissions will be made, can be made by the applicant at that stage, before members go into private session to receive legal advice and to debate the application. The meeting will then resume for the decision to be given with reasons. So that's the extent of the running order. Is there anything that anyone needs clarification of in respect to that?
No.
No. In that case, can I hand you over to the chair of the Licence Committee, Councillor Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. I'm sorry, does somebody want to say something? No? Okay, thank you. So we're formally going to open the meeting. My name is Councillor Penny Matthews and I'll be chairing this morning. The other members are, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Councillor, please. Miss Phillips.
Sorry, Chair, I wasn't sure who you're referring to. I'm Cheryl Phillips, I'm a councillor for Statutory.
And Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, good morning all. I'm Councillor Paul Lloyd and I'm one of the representatives in Bonamine Ward.
Thank you both. And the officers we have with us this morning, Mr. Griffith, who you've already met. I don't know whether you want to say hello again, Mr. Griffith.
If I can, for the simple reason, yes, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Griffith. I'm the legal advisor for the committee, but I also have a colleague of mine who's observing, Nicholas Huffer, who is, you might see NH down at the bottom. He's not taking a formal part in these proceedings. It's just for observation only.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Griffith. And we have Mrs. Anthony. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, I'm Linda Anthony, the licensing manager.
Thank you. Our officer here with me.
Good morning. I'm sorry, we've had a couple of technical problems this morning, so myself and the chair are sharing the screen. My name is Samantha Woon. I'm the Democratic Services Officer. I'll be taking the official record of the meeting, and just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded. I'll pass you over to the chair now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And if you'd like to introduce yourselves, gentlemen, it's Mr. Evans and Mr.
Edwards from DJM Solicitors.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Just make a note.
Mr. Gabe hasn't introduced himself either, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gabe. I think we all know Mr. Gabe, even the applicants were aware of Mr. Gabe. Mr. Gabe, I do apologise.
Oh, no, not at all. Charles Gabe, licensing officer, and I have been dealing with this application.
Thank you. Do members have any declarations of interest, please? Has anyone got any interest? No? I'm now going to ask the licensing officer, Mr. Gabe, to present the report to us. Thank you, Mr. Gabe.
Thank you. An application for a new premises licence was received by this authority on the 19th of March 2021. The premises is Ponderosa, 626 Mumbles Road, Mumbles, Swansea, SA 34EA, and the applicant is Mr. Daniel Evans. The applicant has applied to allow the following licensable activities to take place. It's the supply of alcohol on and off premises, Monday to Sunday, 10 AM till midnight, and late night refreshment, Monday to Sunday, 11 PM till midnight. The venue is set on the Mumbles Road and is one floor on 2 levels. The premises, I'm told, has a capacity of 48 people. A copy of the application is attached at Appendix A. Those are pages 6 to 26 of this report. Initially, the last date for representations was the 16th of April, but this was extended to the 28th of April. The premises is situated on the main road, which runs from the roundabout at the bottom of Newton Road to Limeslade Bay. Mumbles Road, from the junction of Newton Road onto Limeslade, consists of numerous businesses with a few residential properties. However, there are predominantly residential properties in the streets off Mumbles Road. A location plan is attached at Appendix B, and that is on page 28. The premises had a premises licence until March of this year, which was granted in 2011. In the name of the kitchen table, that premises licence lapsed and no longer exists. The kitchen table was food-led, and the licensable hours are as follows. Films, Monday to Sunday, 1800 hours to 22:30. Performance of live music, Monday to Sunday, Saturday, 1830 to 2300 hours, and Sunday 2 PM to 9 PM. We've got recorded music, Monday to Saturday, 9 till 11 PM, and Sunday, 10 AM till 9:30 PM, and the supply of alcohol on premises, Monday to Saturday, 11 AM to 11 PM, and Sunday, 11 AM to 10 PM. In relation to the deregulation of regulated entertainment, although the times for performance of live music and recorded music are as those written above, that would now be permissible between Monday to Sunday, 8 AM to 11 PM, as it would on this licence and any other premises licence that was issued with on sales. Promotion of licensing objectives. The Licensing Act 2003 contains 4 licensing objectives, namely prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Each of these objectives is of equal importance, and the application must demonstrate how they are to be promoted. Conditions which are consistent with the operating schedule and will be attached to the licence if granted are attached at Appendix C. Those are pages 29 and 30 of this report. Relevant representations. There were no relevant representations from the responsible authorities, so I'll go straight down to J. The representation from against the application being granted as applied for were received from Stephen Rees.
Officer Gabe, I'm just wondering whether it's appropriate just for any clarification of the report at this stage, and then when it comes to the relevant representations, they will be dealt with at the next section. I don't know. I'm happy for you to do either way, but I'm just wondering whether that might be appropriate at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I move on to policy consideration.
Yes, please. Then.
In considering this application, members should have regard to the current statement of licensing policy, and I circulated a link to that. Guidance issued by the Home Secretary. Members should also have regard to the relevant parts of the current statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary in April 2018. In particular, introduction, Chapter 1, licensing objectives, Chapter 2, applications for premises licenses, Chapter 8, determining applications, Chapter 9, conditions attached to premises license, Chapter 10, and the statement of licensing policy, Chapter 14. And I circulated a link for that guidance. The decision must be based on the individual merits of the application and the representations received, with a view to promoting the licensing objectives outlined in paragraph 5 of the report. In arriving to the decisions, members should have regard to the relevant provisions of the policy and the guidance as previously provided. Reasons must be provided for any departure from the policy or guidance. In reaching a decision, the committee must have regard to the representations, take such steps mentioned below, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And A, grant the license subject to conditions that reflect the operating schedule, modified to such extent as the authority considers appropriate for promotion of the licensing objectives. Certain regulated entertainment under the Licensing Act 2003 as amended has been deregulated. Where entertainment is deregulated but licensable activities continue to take place on any premises, any license conditions imposed or on a grant of a license in respect of any deregulated entertainment will be suspended. Any mandatory conditions relevant to the license. B, exclude any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. C, refuse to specify a person in the license as the premises supervisor. Or D, reject the application. The licensing subcommittee's instructions are requested.
Thanks, Mr. Gabe. Do either of the committee members have any questions, Mr. Gabe, please?
Oh, thanks.
Not at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. There are no responsible authorities that have made any representation, so we can only go by the written information that we've had through Mr. Gabe, and he's read out those this morning. So I'm going to invite the applicant now.
The relevant representations, I'd advise Mr. Gabe to refrain from doing that until this stage in the proceedings. I think it's important that the representations are aired for the purposes of the actual recording. So now might be a good time for Mr. Gabe to read out the relevant representations, and then maybe the applicant can be invited at that stage then to present their application.
Do you seriously want Mr. Gabe to read them all out? Or just the objectives?
Ideally, it's a matter for the committee. It might be appropriate to read out the objections and then give a summary of the supporting ones. I think, in fairness to the applicant, it should be noted that there are representations in support. However, maybe the nature of those rather than the exact wording of them all.
Thank you.
If there's anything that obviously that the applicant wants to draw upon from those representations, then we can take another view on it. But if it's just a general support for the application, then it may be appropriate just to read out the objections.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, there we are. So, Mr. Gabe, if you're ready, if you don't mind reading out the objections.
Of course, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appendix D1, which is on page 31, is a representation from Stephen Rees on behalf of himself, Mr. John Rees, who's his brother, and his mother, Evelyn Rees. Objection to licensing application for the Ponderosa Wine Bar, 6 to 8 Mumbles Road. My brother and I jointly own number 2 Hallbank Terrace, which is my mother's home. She is 93 and not in good health, but enjoys living quietly in a residential area, which is part of the Mumbles Conservation Area and the Village Lane character area. We have examined and objected to the licence application. With regard to the application document, we note that Part 3 appears to show that the applicant intends to provide live and recorded music, but boxes E and F have not been completed. I explain that at this point. Initially, when the application came in, it was intended putting live and recorded music on it. But when I explained to Daniel that it had been deregulated and he would be entitled to have live and recorded music up until from 8 AM in the morning to 11 PM at night, even if it wasn't listed on his license, the request for live music was taken out of the application. However, the boxes remain ticked, and therefore that caused the confusion for Mr. Rees. For the avoidance of doubt, if we assume that music is provided, however, the premises are too small for live music, and any music would be a nuisance for neighbouring properties. Box I indicates that late night refreshment would be supplied indoors and outdoors, but there is no outdoor space available other than the highway. Box M indicates reliance on CCTV, but its use is primarily involved after an incident has taken place. All supervisors should be specified rather than relying on the licence holder's assessment. Friday to Sunday night school holidays and the summer period should be included. Again, box M, D, notices are of limited use, especially when alcohol has been consumed, and on past experience will be ignored. Given the proximity to our property, bottles in particular should not be moved, etc. after 9 PM. The storage bins should be kept in the rear storage area, not on the highway. Previous owners ran the premises as a restaurant and didn't cause any problems at all, other than cooking smells. A wine bar will attract a different customer, and the consumption of alcohol will inevitably result in antisocial behaviour, particularly affecting the Hallbank Terrace, Rock Hill and Village Lane residential area. The problem arising from the former Antelope Hotel resulted in many complaints and discussions with the council and police to establish effective control measures. We do not want to see a return of the Mumbles Mile mentality. For example, since Elwyn started takeaway alcohol sales recently, we have people urinating on the steps in Rock Hill in the middle of a Sunday afternoon. We are concerned that granting a licence will result in nuisance and antisocial behaviour, including noise and cooking smells for longer periods, street drinking and smoking, urination and vomiting on the highway, particularly Hallbank Terrace, Rock Hill and Village Lane, loud music, disorderly behaviour affecting residents returning home, particularly women, and after dark, obstruction of Village Lane by delivery vehicles. Use of the side door in Village Lane would be a traffic hazard for customers, particularly when stepping outside having consumed alcohol, storage of bins on the highway, and litter in general. Appendix D2 is on page 34 is a representation from Kathleen Phillips. Dear Mr. Gaber, I'm one of the residents of Hallbank Terrace. I'm pleased to hear of a new business opening the former kitchen table and wish them well. However, I wish to express my apprehension relating to the late licence till 12 midnight. If it were up till 11 p.m, I would feel that that would be more acceptable, especially on a weekday. The noise that customers could potentially make on leaving after midnight could be problematic, especially as I leave early for work. Furthermore, the noise of bottles being put into the recycling bin after midnight, for example, would be most unwelcome. With the licence stretching to midnight, I fear that antisocial behaviour could also potentially be an issue. Thank you in advance for your understanding of this matter. I trust these points can be taken into consideration. Kind regards, Kathleen. A representation, Appendix D3 on page 35 from a Linda Venn, who lives in Hallbank Terrace. I am writing to state my objection to the above premises current application for a licence to remain open until 12 midnight. I live in a residential property to the rear of the Ponderosa premises. For many years, we suffered with the problem that the old Antelope Hotel brought through loud music and unsupervised customers both inside and outside the public house. The objection is to the time of the licence finishing at 12 midnight, which will mean customers leaving at least 30 to 40 minutes later with a noise of good night echoing around. When the staff cleaning up and the sounds of bottles being deposited into wheelie bins. With the summer months close and open windows at night. Any noise late at night is not conducive to a good night's sleep. Also, safety issues of customers possibly prowling around our terrace. Under the current COVID lockdowns, we have seen a rise in the number of people drinking on the green opposite. And on a recent Sunday afternoon, my neighbour saw a man relieving himself against the wall at the junction of Village Lane and Rock Hill. Again, this is reminiscent of the Antelope days. Surely 11 p.m. is late enough in a residential area. I have no objections to the new owners opening a business, and I'm pleased that the property has been taken over and that the current situation in the current situation a new business is starting up. Linda Venn. And Appendix D4. It's a representation from a Mr. Hannington, who lives in Village Lane. Dear sirs, this representation is from a resident of the property within about 15 metres of the proposed licensed premises. I oppose the application on the following grounds. The late opening until midnight will make the Ponderosa attractive for those that wish to continue drinking after 2300 hours, as most bars do not offer late opening. This may lead to many drinkers coming to the area late at night with some the worse for drink. Late drinkers are likely to find Village Lane, particularly the steps of Rock Hill, attractive for drinking and smoking, including after closing, leading to noise, litter and behaviour nuisance for local residents who may feel that their safety is threatened by groups in the lane. In addition, the essential bar closing time activities will be at and after midnight, causing nuisance to neighbours. Inevitably, when the bar facilities are closed, drinkers may use Village Lane as a toilet, causing a health hazard. The provision of an off-sales licence until midnight will attract hard drinkers, particularly late at night, who may have spent time earlier drinking in other establishments and may choose to use Village Lane to drink and smoke, including after closing, leading to noise, litter and behaviour nuisance for local residents who may feel that their safety is threatened by groups in the lane. Inevitably, when the bar facilities are closed, drinkers may use Village Lane as a toilet, causing a health hazard. Yours faithfully, Ellie Harrington. I have then a further 8, I believe, representations. They're page 37 to 45, and they all support the granting of the premises licence and some of them refer to Mr. Evans as being a responsible person to run such an establishment. If you want me to read those out, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, thank you. Do either of the committee members have any questions, please, for Mr. Gabe? Oh, Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's probably a general question and not just specific to this application at the moment. But given the number of comments that have been made about the use of the public realm as being used as a public toilet, given that we have allowed the use of Southend Gardens as an outside catering area, have we provided any form of, you know, the public, what do you call it, toilets, you know, portable portaloos and what have you? Do you know? Would anybody know? Because it might be a point, as I say, not specific to this, but if there isn't, then maybe this is something that we should look into do.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. Mr. Evans can answer your question, Councillor Philpott, I think, at least.
There is some public toilet facilities down there at the moment, but obviously I think most places need more of them. I offered, I wrote to, I think it's, councillor, I can't remember the guy's name now, but I wrote to the council offering to actually provide portaloos myself and pay for them. It wasn't rejected as in no, you can't do that. It was welcomed with open arms, but because of the pandemic at the moment, they thought that in order to maintain them and keep them clean and safe, the amount of effort that would take sort of outweighed the actual problem, which is there. But I have offered to provide those portaloos to hopefully help relieve any of these issues. But that's all I wanted to say.
I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Gabe?
I'm sure Linda will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the COVID regs allow premises to open their toilets for customers of theirs to use the toilets if they've purchased drinks from there. So there would be nothing wrong in the customers returning to where they bought their off sales and asking to use the toilets at that premises.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now we're going to the applicant now, and I don't know whether Mr. Edwards or Mr. Evans, which one of you is going to present the information to us?
It's going to be Mr. Edwards, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before I begin, I will make a confession. I'm not very IT well versed in IT. I just wanted to check whether two documents which Mr. Evans circulated to Mr. Gabe yesterday have found their way to you, be it electronically or in paper form. One of those documents is a set of photographs of the internal area of the Ponderosa. The other is a schedule of comparable licensed properties in and around the vicinity of Mumbles Road, which we say are relevant in your deliberations and considerations. I'm going to refer to the document which is the comparable document, and unless any of you want to ask Mr. Evans questions about the photographs, they have been provided for your information only, so that you can understand the premises that we are talking about. Okay, Mr. Gabe has introduced the application and has done it succinctly, so I don't want to unnecessarily duplicate matters, but in brief, premises used to be the kitchen table in Mumbles, which was predominantly a food-led business, albeit it did have the necessary alcohol license as outlined. The capacity is 48 persons, naturally would be limited in this COVID era for the present. The application envisages a business plan which is a cafe style premises during the daytime, and then as we move into the evening, more of a wine bar type premises. What the premises intends is to sell premium products. There are no promotions which are considered, whether they are happy hours or 2 for 1 or anything like that. And the clientele which the premises hopes to attract will be expected to pay premium prices for any alcohol which they do consume. To put it bluntly, it's not akin to a Wetherspoons type pub where promotions are made throughout the day. Mr. Gabe has referred to the fact that there was a previous license in place until March 2021 when it lapsed. In terms of the applicant, Mr. Evans, a little bit of background for you all, and of course you are invited to ask any specific questions of Mr. Evans in due case. Mr. Evans used to operate the premises known as the Heist on the High Street. Had operated that since 2016, although before that it was a cafe style bar, but from 2016 it was a venue bar, which was quite substantial, quite popular. Sadly, because of the pandemic, that business closed last year. It was unworkable, unfeasible economically. It wasn't open for a start, and if it, when restrictions were eased a little last year, it wouldn't work economically given the requirements for social distancing, etc. Since then, and since the back end of last summer, Mr. Evans has taken over the Valley Hotel in Bishopston, in the village of Bishopston, an old style hotel stroke pub in the middle of a residential area, right in the bang in the middle of the village of Bishopston. He has invested significant sums in constructing a suitable outdoor area, a substantial outdoor area at the Valley, which is proved to be a resounding success with locals and others alike that have come there. Historically, Mr. Evans' track record will show that he has created a number of jobs, both full-time and part-time. In respect of this application, if granted, it is hoped that Mr. Evans will create 5 full-time jobs and 5 part-time jobs. Some of them may naturally be seasonal. And as I said, has committed already, you may have seen that in the photographs, a substantial investment in getting the premises in the style that he desires. So that's a little bit about Mr. Evans. As I said, after my submission, if you wish to ask questions or at any time about Mr. Evans's history and background in the licensed trade, please feel free to do so. Moving on to the application itself, and again, without duplicating what Mr. Gabe has said, there are essentially 2 licensable activities which are sought and has as Mr. Gabe has recorded, it's the sale and supply of alcohol on and off the premises from 10 a.m. till midnight, 7 days a week. The previous license, for by way of comparison, had a license up till 11 p.m. And there is the provision of hot food, if applicable, for the extra hour beyond 11 p.m. Up till midnight. And as Mr. Gabe has confirmed, simply because of the deregulation of certain licensable activities over the years, live music and the like are not part of the application. If I could then take you to the document which Mr. Gabe hopefully circulated, which is headed Alcohol Sales Times, Relevant Premises, Mumbles Road. And I'll just very briefly, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 comparable properties in the area. And I just wanted to briefly touch on the licensable hours in respect of these premises. First of all, you have the Village Inn, which is at the Swansea end of Mumbles. As you come into Mumbles, you can see the hours for the supply of alcohol: 9 in the morning till midnight, Monday to Thursday, and with an extension up to 1:30 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Incidentally, come back to this as part of the submission when I deal with perhaps some of the objections raised. There is no requirement on the license for door supervision. In the application itself, in the conditions at Appendix C, you will see that Mr. Evans offers door supervision on a risk assessment basis. So if there are substantial events, perhaps being shown on TV, or some other event in Mumbles area which could prove popular, such as the Mumbles boat race, then in those circumstances there will be a suitable risk assessment as to whether door supervisors will be necessary. Okay, it's not known whether other premises in this schedule have a similar risk assessment process, but that is a condition which Mr. Evans is prepared to offer. We go on to the Dark Horse, which opened recently. It's opened in the pandemic. Alcohol hours at 9 till midnight, 9 in the morning till midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and then extended up to 1 a.m. The weekends. You have Chaplin's Steakhouse, which is currently closed, but still has an existing license, naturally a food-driven basis. Licensing hours 11 in the morning till midnight, 7 days a week. Pilot, very quickly, 11 till midnight in the week, 10 till 1 a.m. on the weekend. Elwyn, which again has opened recently, referred to in one of the letters of objection. Monday to Saturday, the licensing hours 10 till midnight, Sunday 12 till 11:30. George, long-established public house in Mumbles, 10 till 11:30 in the week, extended to midnight on the weekend. And finally, another new business, T Kuru, excuse my Welsh pronunciation. Hours there, Monday to Saturday, 10 till midnight, Sunday 12 noon till 11:30 at night. The point that the applicant makes is when one considers the hours requested in the application, they are not unusual, they are not onerous. This is not an application requesting the hours up till 4 a.m. in the morning, and that is highly relevant when one considers an objection which is made on the basis that every person who is in Mumbles will attend the Ponderosa after all the other pubs have closed, because the Ponderosa has longer hours. That is not the case. In fact, the opposite is the case. These other pubs, should they choose to be open for that period of time, will be open later than Ponderosa. So that is essentially the application and some information about the applicant. Very briefly, in terms of the law or the tests to be applied, the points to be taken into account, I don't need to take you through the 4 licensing objectives. They are well known, they're well established, they all carry the same weight in your deliberations. That must be the approach. I refer to the council's own licensing policy. Again, I assume that you are all well versed with that policy. I'll make a few points that I've picked out in terms of the policy and the intention behind it in Swansea. This is not, incidentally, a saturated area, which is referred to therein. But some points out of the policy. The hospitality industry is, of course, important in Swansea, both in the local community, but also in respect of tourism. Okay, it is a fundamental point of Swansea tourism. There is a desire to create jobs. We appreciate that the policy appreciates there's equally a duty to protect local residents. We will submit that that duty is not breached, it is met by the application. There is a partnership approach to be adopted by the council. That's working in partnership with applicants, with residents, with responsible authorities, and it's striking the balance between the economic and commercial desire for licensed premises and weighed up against the needs of the responsible authorities and local people. Incidentally, and again coming back to some of the objections which have been raised, and Councillor Phillips had asked an interesting question about how do you police or manage people outside who may be urinating in public places and the like. Paragraph 4.5 of the Council's licensing policy reads as follows: licensing law is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour by individuals once they are away from the licensed premises and beyond the direct control of the persons holding the relevant authorisation. In other words, that is something for the police to police. Even though Mr. Evans said, because of the difficult and unusual circumstances we all find ourselves in at the moment, he has offered to provide facilities which could appease any concerns about antisocial behaviour in the sense of urinating in the streets. But ultimately, that isn't the job of licensing. That is the job of primarily the police, although obviously you try and work hand in hand in respect of this collaborative partnership approach. And one final point in terms of the policy, the Council's policy, is paragraph 7.1. Bear with me, with all these papers everywhere. Paragraph 7.1 in relation to licensed hours reads as follows: when determining individual license applications for premises, the licensing hours will be decided having regard to the individual merits of each application. Well, that says what it says. What I'm emphasising is this: the presumption will be to grant the hours as requested unless there are objections to those hours raised by responsible authorities, and there are no objections in this case, or other persons. We accept there are other persons who have raised objections, but they must be on the basis of the licensing objective. And in order for an objection to be credibly upheld, there needs to be some evidential basis upon which those objections are raised. For example, if the police raised an objection on the basis of crime, disorder, antisocial behaviour, one would expect the police to produce to a licensed hearing some evidence, some statistics as to why there is a risk in respect of that licensing objective. In our submission, and I will deal with the objections in due course, there is no evidence offered. And therefore, going back to the presumption under the council's policy, the hours should be granted, or the presumption at least is that the hours should be granted. Turning to the objections, or in some cases the lack of objections, it is pretty important in my submission. There are no objections from responsible authorities. And that is a fundamental point. They've all had the opportunity to consider the application, and not one has raised an objection on any of the 4 licensing objectives. That is a fundamental point. What we do have are some objections, 4 of them, from local residents. Now, they are entitled to object, and as I have explained, Mr. Evans, in running the Valley Hotel, being the licensee or tenant of the Valley Hotel, is well versed in dealing with premises in residential areas. Some of the objections are incorrect. I think Mr. Gay explained the objection by Messrs. Rees in respect of live music, and explained how the objection was raised based on the original application. Some of the objections may even go as far as being frivolous. I say that in a guarded way, but I say it because those objections need to be supported by evidence, and it cannot be ignored that but for those objections, we would not have this hearing today, and none of those persons who objected, as is their right, have chosen to attend this hearing today, where we can have an opportunity to discuss particularly what their concerns are. In respect of Messrs. Rees, a few weeks ago, and in having received the objection, Mr. Evans did speak with Mr. Stephen Rees. He telephoned him to discuss his concerns, to see if there was something that could be done, or some common ground that could be found, which would alleviate the concerns and avoid the need and expense for this hearing. Unfortunately, that discussion didn't bear fruit, come to a solution. But it is disappointing on our side of the table that we do not have those objectors here today, where we can discuss the application and invite them to produce the evidence as one would expect an objector to do, rather than objecting for, dare I say it, the sake of objecting. They need to be credible objections backed up by evidence, and we don't see that. But in any event, I will take you briefly through the objections. So I am now looking through exhibits D1 to D4. D1 is obviously the objections from Messrs. Rees on behalf of their elderly mother living up the road. We've already, Mr. Gabe has helpfully already dealt with the issue of live music. And one of the objections is the provision of late night refreshment is sought, and that there's no outside area. That is correct. There is no outside area. What is being proposed there is an application whereby it is permissible for takeaway food to be consumed off the premises in that hour. Now, whether there's a demand for that remains to be seen, but that is the nature of the application. It is not people congregating outside and eating a bag of chips to put the blood, okay? Because there is no outside area as such. There is an objection as to the effectiveness or otherwise of the CCTV which is offered as a condition by Mr. Evans. I'm not really sure what the objection is. The CCTV is both live in the sense that somebody can sit in a back room and watch it, and it is also in a reportable form. I'm not sure what more can be asked of an applicant in that regard. There is the reference to potential antisocial behaviour. There are 3 points I make on that. Firstly, there is no evidence such that this application will create an increase in antisocial behaviour. One must bear in mind that this is a small premises containing no more than 48 people. So there is no evidence in that regard. Secondly, in terms of antisocial behaviour, as I've referred to in the council's own policy, it's not the duty of licensing law to deal with antisocial behaviour once those people have left premises. And thirdly, if it was a concern regarding antisocial behaviour, then that would be a concern properly addressed by the police by way of proper representation, and no representation has been received. Moving on to the objection by Kathleen Phillips. It's an objection of sorts. I think on one hand, she's quite positive about new businesses. We all remember Mumbles in the day from being pub after pub after pub, and then all these pubs shutting down and being boarded up and it turning into a ghost town. And now we're getting the investment back in. But she would prefer the licensable hours to be capped at 11 p.m. rather than 12 midnight. I suppose other residents would too. My point on that is that the application is not inconsistent with other public houses and licensed premises in the vicinity. There is no real evidence that any of the licensing objectives would be affected, or that there are any concerns with those being dealt with in a different fashion as a result of an extra hour. She does raise the issue regarding, and it's a valid point, the noise of bottles being loaded into the bottle recycling ban. The application itself makes that clear. That will not happen after 11 p.m. anyway. So I think that point is dealt with. And as I've said, there's no real evidence of anti-social behaviour. There's a limited capacity. With the clientele which the applicant looks to attract are those that are going to be paying premium prices for alcohol, not the sort of happy-go-lucky people that flipped from pub to pub, even if they were allowed to in the COVID era anyway. But that's not the purpose of this application. The third application from Linda Venn, broadly in similar terms to Kathleen Phillips. So Mr. Gabe has read it out, and I would say the same principles from the application apply. And fourthly, in terms of Mr. Harrington, I would just say it's incorrect for him to say that the application has an application for later hours than other licensed premises. Hopefully I've proved that not to be the case. In fact, other licensed premises are or do have the opportunity to be open for later consumption. That is the applicant's position on the objections. To paraphrase what I've said, they're not supported by any credible evidence. The real objections would be from the responsible authorities. It is striking that none of them have put up an objection. But in any event, the application itself is rather constrained. It's not like some other applications one would see, and it is in keeping with other premises in the locality. My final point is just in respect of the letters of support. There are 8 letters of support, which is always nice to see, and it's particularly nice to see, given what the hospitality trade has been through in the last 12 months. It's nice to see people wanting to encourage more businesses to create jobs, to stimulate the local economy and tourism after this particularly challenging year. There are some letters of support from people who clearly know or have clearly been to premises previously run by Mr. Evans, complimentary of him in the way that he manages these licensed premises. And there is one which raises a valid point in the COVID era, that in terms of Oyster Wharf, where you have Bistro Pierre and others down there, but it can get congested down there. And some people may be uncomfortable, even outdoors, sitting out there. So an alternative to that is sometimes preferred by others. So in summary, I will make the following 6 points in summary. The application is not onerous, nor is it out of the ordinary. It is consistent with other applications which have been made over the years, and broadly consistent with licensable hours in Mumble's vicinity. There were no objections from the responsible authorities. That is an important and fundamental point. Where residents have raised objections, hopefully we have managed to point out that these are not justified nor supported by any evidence, and that is crucial. And it's disappointing that they didn't come today, where we could have explored that a little more. As I've said, the actual activities upon which the application is based is pretty consistent with other establishments in the vicinity. The applicant, Mr. Evans, has a proven track record. The heist in the high street is a difficult street in which to have a licensed premises on. Let's not beat around the bush. Okay, he ran that successfully for a number of years. And you can't ignore 8 letters of support from people that have either know Mr. Evans or been to his premises or are based in and around the area or have the interests of Mumble's heart. They cannot be ignored either. So, unless I can assist you with any further questions, that concludes the submission for the applicant. As I've pointed out, Mr. Evans is here. He could answer more practical questions than I could in terms of the application, but unless any of you have any questions, that is the submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. We could now go to the committee members who will be invited to ask questions of you. So who'd like to start? Ms. Philpott?
Thank you, Chair. I apologise. I think I'm having a technical hitch this morning because I think I'm echoing everywhere. And I think I've got a deep enough voice as it is, so I apologise. If I could just say, first of all, I just wanted to clarify something that Mr. Edwards brought up. And that was the comment that I made about the public conveniences. I wanted to stress that I didn't make that comment in relation to this application.
No.
It was just a question that, as it had been raised,
yes, I understand.
That sort of, well, you know, it is a query. What are we doing about it? And I have to say, I'm grateful to Mr. Evans for the offer, and I wonder why we don't do that, because I do think that this is something. It's a simple solution. You know, so because it was the last point you made, Mr. Edwards. I'm trying to think. Was that you mentioned about the letters of support, and I would say 3 of those letters were from people living in Westport, 2 from Bishopston, 1 from Southgate, and 2 we don't know better. I understand that gave a lot of support to the way Mr. Evans actually runs the business. However, they don't actually live in Mumbles and they live close to the establishment. And also, when we consider the application, because there is no evidence at the moment, you don't have to record at that property. So we have to make sure, looking at the licence objectives, you do have plans in place to be able to support those licensing objectives, which is why people have raised queries, because it was happy before and not a licensed premises. So I did have some questions. I wanted, if I could ask Mr. Griffith for his advice. I wanted to link them into conditions like quicker.
Okay, so shall we go to Councillor Lloyd, because he's got questions he's ready for. Okay, Councillor Lloyd, do you have some questions, please?
Yeah, just the one. In the report, and it was mentioned here about the seating capacity will increase. So I take it you're going to reconfigure the layout of the building?
Well, with regards to how it stands at the moment, I think there's about 30 people at absolute most we can get in there because of the coronavirus regulations. But in general, we're looking at something around the 48 to 50 mark, where everyone's, you know, pleasantly sitting down or standing up safely. But that figure of 48 to 50, it'll be around that sort of that figure. But the actual configuration of the room itself, well, it could change around a little bit, but not too much, because it's quite a small little place.
Right, just on a rough, I saw the photograph of the interior.
Yeah.
The count of the seating in there wouldn't allow for that. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying that there must be some reconfiguration going to take place.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the photo doesn't show it, you know, in its best light. But I mean, there are you can fit 48 people sitting down. But to be honest with you, that's it doesn't practically work like that. In order for people to have a nice time, in order to be safe, etc. You know, it could be a lot less. It could be 40. But as it's a new place. I mean, for example, I think the tables are in that shop. Those tables could potentially be moved, and then you have the seating on the outside in order to make more space. But that 48 is the sort of top end figure, real top end.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about the seating, I've got to be honest, because I've counted 26 seats, and you're saying that 48 people can go in there. Now, does that mean that we're going to have 22 people standing drinking at the bar?
Well, no, I wouldn't. No, that counted out. It does depend on the configuration of it, but you can actually fit. I mean, maybe the photo don't show it, but there's lots of areas on the edge of the bar where you can sit down on stools. Yeah. So maybe the photo doesn't show it, but to be honest with you, it doesn't really, like I just said, it doesn't really show the whole place in general. But there certainly won't be many people standing at the bar, because it's only a small place. But there will be some people standing, I would have thought.
Is it configured for COVID at the moment?
It's configured for COVID at the moment.
Yeah, so to make the point clear, at the moment, what you can see in there is a configuration which complies with the government's requirements on social distancing. What we're saying, I think, in terms of the capacity of 48 or 50, as Mr. Evans, 48 to 50, as he just mentioned, that would be in a post-COVID era, if one exists in that. What I mean by that is not that COVID would be here forever and a day, but it applies when restrictions are lifted in their entirety. That's my understanding.
Yeah, we get smaller tables, smaller chairs, and that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
Because at the base of the steps there, you've got 6 seats. They're not COVID related, the distance in there, because you can see quite clearly they're very close together.
Yeah,
And I calculated those in the 26, so.
Yeah, you can fit 6 people, obviously around one table. But what we've got, I think there's 2 tables and then 2 tables. We've taken one table out just to be doubly safe. And we've got screens going up in between each one. So we've really played it safe. I mean those pictures which you see there, we've actually made it even more secure by reducing the capacity even less up to now.
Okay, that's great. Smoking, where would you expect the people that use your establishment now and want to have a cigarette? Where would they go? Would it be outside or would it be in the garden or?
Well, I mean, we've put ash buckets of sand and ashtrays in just out the front on the left hand side as you go in, but people are. Yeah, we have got very little experience of this because we've only been open a week inside, but most people obviously are going over the road anyway at the moment.
Okay. Bottles, you've got until 11 o'clock. That's very late to go moving bottles. And I'm just wondering how you would feel about that, moving that time a bit.
To be honestly, absolutely fine. It makes no difference. We do very little bottles. It's not. There's not massive amounts of them. We can certainly store them anywhere in the premises until the next morning. Obviously, we're not going to do it at 6 o'clock in the morning, but we'll do it at a responsible time in the morning. That's not an issue. It's no problem at all.
That's great. And live music is definitely off the cards.
Yeah, yes, too small.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, do you know, when did the Antelope close? Would you know, or shall I go back to the officers? They'll know the answer to that.
12, 13 years ago?
Yeah. From my understanding, many years ago, then there was some what looks like underpinning works there, because at the bottom of the hill there, I suspect it was structurally unsafe. There was talk about it reopening and various people being interested, but it remains closed, it remains boarded up. It's a bit of an eyesore down there, but it's been well over 10 years, I would have thought.
I would have thought 10 years, I've got to be honest. That's fine. And the outside area you mentioned, would that be your garden area? Because that's not in the curtilage of where you've asked for a license for. So would you be using the garden area?
Yeah, well, we haven't got an area ourselves. It's just at the moment we're allowed to use the South End Gardens bit across the road with the other businesses. Obviously, we'd love to see that carry on, but 2022 and onwards. Hence, what I've done is I bought 4 240-litre bins and put them over there, and my staff take the rubbish out every single day, and 3 times a week I get a local business to come and take them away, because prevention's better than cure, and it stops any overfilling because there's lots of nice businesses along there. You've got the Yallop's fish shop as well as all the other ones, and of course people sit in the gardens and they're big cardboard boxes. They've got to go somewhere, and what I was seeing initially was the small bins which are there. They were just it wasn't that people were just chucking rubbish away, that this wasn't the capacity there. So anyway, cut a long story short, prevention's better than cure. I bought a load of bins, and now we haven't got the problem anymore.
That's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, it was just, am I okay just sort of like, I thought to expedite matters, that if I refer to the conditions, that it might be quicker. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So just to go on, for condition 6, Chair, you mentioned about the smoking outside. So one of my concerns then was, how will you stop people from taking their drinks out with them while they're having a cigarette, because obviously that means that if they take their drinks out, they're drinking on the pavement as well.
That's plastic glasses.
That would have to be plastic glasses outside only, and we'd obviously display signage saying no glassware to be taken outside at any point.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you would have the signage, but you wouldn't be licensed for actually serving around the perimeter of the building. So it was, how would you stop people from taking the glasses out?
How would we stop?
My staff would be trained.
My staff will be trained, and I mean, there would be signage saying you're not allowed to take no glassware to be taken outside at any point, and anyone that was taking a glass outside, we'd stop them.
And I think to add to that, sorry, it may not be evidently clear, but in respect of any off sales, and I think I may have read it in the conditions, they are to be in sealed containers, and in respect of those sales, there would be in plastic containers outside as well. Now, I think the point you were making, Councillor Philpott, is that if somebody is inside and wants to go out for a cigarette, he or she may take his pint of beer or glass of wine with them. That's got to be a staffing training issue, accompanied by appropriate signage and a little degree of common sense on the part of the participant as well. But it's something that would apply to a lot of premises, and they've got to get to grips with it to stop it happening. What this premises doesn't have, sadly, is an outdoor smoking area within the curtilage of the premises where that doesn't become a problem. So it's chiefly a training and staffing issue.
But you could understand where I was actually coming from.
Yeah, definitely. It's happened in the Hive.
Going then on to, I wanted to take condition 9 and condition 11 together. Condition 9 is, you've said that you'd have notices at the stating to people you must consider the neighbours when you leave, etc. But Mr. Edwards, when you were giving your review of the application, the number of occasions that you said, well, somebody leaves premises, that isn't the responsibility of the licence holder, that's the responsibility of the police. But as Mr. Prevention is better than cure, and because there's no evidence, it's really related to the concerns that were brought up for the neighbours. And Mr. So you want to have a good relationship with them.
I don't know whether other people are struggling. I'm struggling to hear what Councillor Philpott is saying.
Yes.
Do you have devices, Councillor Philpott?
I've just switched off every phone. I've had the phone on, so I'm literally in a room with just the only thing that's on is the laptop. So I know I'm in a conservatory, but I can't understand why it's echoing. If I speak closer, does that make it any better?
Okay, at the moment.
Okay. So it was just really because I was a little bit concerned then when you said about that it was the police have to enforce, and I didn't want any abdication of responsibility here, and which is why I brought in condition 11 at the same time. I think it will be reassuring the local residents have a telephone number to be able to contact somebody, but it is, what are you going to do about your civic premises and people leaving there? I know that you can't be answerable to everybody else. I mean, obviously, Elwyn's has been suggested as antisocial behaviour. You can't be responsible for everybody. But what you do yourselves to ensure that people leave the country? And if they were in the lane, what would you be doing if they were in the lane, etc., etc.?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, other than the obvious putting signs up saying please respect the neighbourhood, please leave quietly, and also us policing it ourselves indoors, asking people to be respectful when they leave. Other than that, you know, the signage wise and being polite to the customers, there's not much else we can do. But the big thing with this is that this isn't a case of just wanting to open, letting everyone, you know, come in, get drunk, and then opening the doors and everyone leaving. We really want to be part of the community. I live in Mumbles. I live about 30 yards up the road as well. It's like the Bishopston Valley Hotel. You know, this is if it's a residential area, which it is, well, that's great. So we want to be part of the residential area. You don't want to work against it, and it would be stupid in order to sort of, you know, bite the hand which feeds you. It's the local residents we want to look after first and foremost. You know, this chap mentions, you know, his elderly mother lives behind us. Well, that should be a positive, really, because what I'm doing and what my staff are doing is policing the area a lot better. And it has happened. People have, not necessarily from other pubs, they could have just been walking down the front and they've tried to nip in and go to the toilet round the back somewhere. We've stopped them. We've actually stopped them and said, sorry, guys, you know, you can't do that. And I've got to say, it's not always, guys, you can't do that, but there are public toilets over there. Thanks very much. And off they go. And we want to be part of the community because that's, you know, commercially that makes sense. But also, you know, in the long run, it's really important to work with local residents, not to be against them. So we'll be actively making sure that that local residents are looked after, 100%.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No?
Can I just ask points of
I was
clarification?
just going to say that, yes. Mr. Griffith.
Yeah, can I just ask points of clarification? These aren't questions, really, just points of clarification more than anything. The 48 to 50 capacity that you quote, is that the fire safety capacity or what you feel can be managed effectively?
It's not the fire capacity. I haven't had that officially off them yet.
Okay.
That's a. It's not you know, it's not a finger in the air job. To be honest, that's very conservative. I know you think that the place is it does look like the place is very, very small, but with the right amount of seating, as in bar stools, etc., you could possibly get, you know, more people standing in there. But we don't really want that. We want it to be a nice, cute little wine bar, not everyone, you know, shoulder to shoulder, covered in sweat. It's not going to be that sort of place. So that is actually quite a conservative estimate, but we think that's what the sort of place we want to have.
I just wanted to check whether that was a point of reference made on that that risk assessment rather than right. Okay, just so the committee would be grateful for that clarification. And the other point is, I think there was possibly a slight misunderstanding in respect of the bottles being emptied. My understanding from the conditions is that the bottles wouldn't be emptied until 8 a.m. the morning after, rather than 11 p.m. 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. was the period which it couldn't be done. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
There we are.
Okay. Yes.
Would there be room?
So yes, the condition 13 for your reference is what is offered as a condition to the license should it be granted is that I'll just use bottles for the purpose of illustrating the point. No bottles outside between the hours of 11 p.m. and 8 in the morning. And Mr. Evans did, in response to a question, say he wouldn't have a problem if those hours were extended, say, I don't know, from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
I think the concern of the residents is more to do with the other side of it, when bottles being emptied into a skip makes all the noise.
Yeah.
So I think that's that's how I read the objections to that aspect of it. Anyway, would there be room for manoeuvre with that side of the bracket as well?
Yes, Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it could be 10 o'clock, 10:30, just so that we can get it clear for when we open. But yeah, about 10, 10:30 is no problem at all.
Those are the only points that I wanted to raise. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question? Would it be a huge inconvenience if at the end of the night, say for the last half an hour, you closed the side door so people had to leave through the front door? This might be some reassurance to your neighbours then behind.
At the moment it might, because of the COVID stuff. But
because you've got a one-way system in place at the moment.
But no, it wouldn't at all. Really, wouldn't make any difference at all.
I'm just thinking of giving some sort of,
that's quite a good idea. Yeah, well, it is a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, that's something we could consider then. Thank you. So would you like to sum up, please? I don't know which one of you would like to do that.
Well, as I said, I don't really want to go over what I've said, but in summary, I just make the point, or repeat the points I made. The application, it's quite limited in its nature. It's not out of the ordinary. It's not onerous. The activities sought are not onerous. The hours sought are consistent with the area. We've talked about the lack of objections from the responsible authorities. That leads me to conclude that those authorities are content that the application promotes and sits comfortably with the licensing objectives. We've talked about the objections from the residents. I think that in perhaps to elaborate on Councillor Phillips' point, my point about the objections lacking evidence, that's a legal point in terms of determining these types of applications. Any point which is raised must be supported by evidence, otherwise we have a system where no license is ever granted because people object. We've heard Mr. Evans say how what he's done in terms of the outside area and what he's done already in anticipation of obtaining a license, how he'll try and work with residents. It's not that those objections are ignored. On a practical point, they are heard, and they are heard loudly. But legally, for the purpose of an application, they have to be supported by credible evidence. And the point in the council's own licensing policy is that we will, or Mr. Evans will do what he can to promote those licensing objectives whilst people are in his premises and are leaving his premises. What he struggles to do, as any licensee would do, is promote those licensing objectives when whoever's left is 100 yards up the road doing something that he or she ought not to be doing in the street. And that is the point I was making in terms of that being something for the police to do. And it can't be understated. And again, I think it was Councillor Phillips' point about the letters of support. Unfortunately, mine were redacted, so I couldn't see where everybody was living or coming from. But they're all in and around the area. I appreciate they are not residents in the Mumbles area, but these are people that use Mumbles by the sounds of it, and are supportive of Mumbles as a village. And finally, a lot of these applications are similar when many applicants put forward a request for a license. One thing that can be of impact in any decision is looking at the applicant himself in this case and his track record. This isn't an inexperienced person coming in fresh-faced and green to the business, who doesn't understand that people sometimes sneak a drink out when they go for a cigarette. This is somebody who has run, as I said, I'm not going to beat around the bush, a premises on a street in Swansea, which is difficult to run a premises on in High Street, and has also has run premises bang in the middle of a residential area and works with the residents to promote that business. Because if you don't work with the residents, they're not going to come to your business, you're going to fail. So other than going over what I have said as part of the application, hopefully that summarises the basis of the same.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now be going into recess.
Okay.
And I should think if we could come back by about 10 to 12.
So do we stay online or do we leave and get a link to come back on then? Maybe Mr. Gay can help me. Do I click the link again?
If you leave,
Yes.
and then at the appropriate time, I'll invite you back in.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for listening.
Very nice. Is he? Yeah.